Welcome back to the Tracy Take. I am Tyler here with my brother Ryan, and today we are doing my mock draft on our Mock Draft Monday series. Every Monday, Ryan and I will be releasing a different mock draft, and we're rotating weeks. So last week's was Ryan's. Be sure to go check his out, and also be sure to like and subscribe to the channel as well after watching his video. Then when you see his and you're finished watching with mine as well, leave a comment down. Let us know which mock draft you like the most and why. So Ryan, we are going to be doing this every single week up until the draft. It's been fun too, just kind of going through and seeing like which teams I feel like are kind of falling into a pattern here. This is the third one of mine, so looking forward to getting into this. I'm going to have a little bit different philosophy as well after the second pick. So I try and do as much of like what I think the team will do, but what's so fun about this draft is the fact that like by pick 11. I mean, anything can go and happen there. So you're trying to figure out all these different scenarios that would make sense for the team. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. Let's see if we can pull up the mock draft here. So we use PFF once when we get in there. And so I probably like PFF the most, I would say. And then if we could blow it up just a little bit more, just so we see perfect. That's perfect right there. So kicking off here with Chicago, we've been seeing a lot of these debates here on our comments and our videos on what's going on here. And I'll just say now, until said otherwise, I think the Bears are going to trade Justin Fields. And with that, obviously they're going to be picking a QB here at number one. And still as of right now, I mean, it's very close. I'm going with Caleb Williams here at number one. Once again, then two with Washington, I think we've all seen enough of Sam Howell. You can make an argument if he had a fair shake or not. I also want to address a couple of comments from, I think, Ryan's last mock draft, and also I think on some of mine about Drake May being pick number two. Once again, kind of until said otherwise, or until there's new information out that we can see Jaden Daniels and Drake May side by side. I know Marvin Harrison Jr. is like one of the top prospects, but the Commanders, they have a really good receiver room. I mean, maybe you can argue maybe Brock Bowers, but I'd be shocked if Brock Bowers went over Marvin Harrison Jr. Because I think he'd be a great addition to this Commanders locker room. But I'm going to go with Drake May. I think they're going to reset the clock. They're still searching for the new head coach as of this recording. So we're recording this a couple days before Monday the 29th. So this is where I'm going to change things up here because I've gone three quarterbacks in a row now for the past couple of times. And so I am actually going to go here, Ryan, because you and I, we've gone back and debated this on whether or not they'll go offensive lineman or whether or not they'll go with Marvin Harrison Jr. And I think it is – I think everybody can agree there's not really much of a debate on who the top prospect is in this draft, and that's Marvin Harrison Jr. So I think they're going to take best player available here. I know you have some concerns about that because what's going on with Garrett Wilson at the New York Jets. Mm-hmm. I will say over the franchise, the New England Patriots, historically now, of course, they're changing their head coach. But over the past 2 decades, for a majority of my life and almost all of yours, they've been run significantly better than how the New York Jets have been run. So I think their offensive line, even though they have a lot of deficiencies on the offensive line, is still better than the New York Jets. I think Bailey Zappi is more confident than Zach Wilson, Trevor Siemian were last year. So if he is the guy that they end up going with, not saying that they're not going to go with more talent later on. So, but I'm going to go with Marvin Harrison Jr. here. I think he immediately makes that receiver room significantly better, which is honestly that hard to do.
Yeah.
Once again, also changing this up here, I've gone receiver for the Cardinals here back to back. So I'm actually going to mix it up here also. I saw one thing as well where if Cardinals are in an interesting spot here with DJ Humphries tearing his ACL towards the end of the season last year, what's the tackle position going to be like? They got Paris Johnson Jr., who was one of the better right tackles last year, and it was his rookie season. So do you keep him there or maybe kick him over to left guard and take a tackle? I think they're going to figure that out when they draft Joe Alt here at the left tackle. And I'll just say now, there's a little foreshadowing. This isn't going to be the last that we hear of the Cardinals maybe making a big splash. I know they're picking again here, but I think they're going to move up and potentially address that receiver position here in the not too distant future. So just to spoil it, because they have 6 picks in the top 100, so I think they can be aggressive and maybe go get a different guy that they like. So moving on now with the Chargers as well. This is another one. I had gone Brock Bowers several times in a row and doing my mocks here. And Keenan Allen's getting old. Mike Williams coming off an ACL. Quinn Johnson's definitely still up in the air. A lot of guys are on contracts. I think I think they're going to be free agents after the 2024 season. They need a stud for that receiver room. And Brock Bowers is a very good pick here, but I think it's hard to not just go and take Malik Nabers also and shore up that receiver room. You could go get a tight end later on, potentially go get a veteran tight end. He's a little bit younger than Gerald Everett in free agency for very cheap. And a team that, if I'm not mistaken, I think they are struggling a little bit on the cap space side.
I think they're at negative 30 million.
Something like that. I have to go back and double check. But I think going Malik Nabers here is probably the option. I will say I've done enough of these mock drafts. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts as well. I think this is the most obvious trade back spot of all the teams here. When I look at all the other teams in the top 10, the way that they've kind of fallen, it feels like there's a player that, unless they just fall in love with, there's a lot of players there that any team would be extremely happy with. So, like, for example here, like with the New York Giants as well. They missed on Marvin Harrison Jr. They missed on Malik Nabers. They missed on Joe Alt. If they still wanted that. Hey, if they still want a game-changing receiver, still go get the number one receiver, that guy is still there. Rome Odunze, to me, I think they could go with Rome Odunze here. So I'm pushing him up a little bit more maybe than what some other people, even like what PFF has here as the average draft position at 8. But so you're picking him at 6, and in any other class that Malik Nabers, Marvin Harrison Jr. wasn't in, he's one of the top receivers. He would have been the top receiver in last year's class by far.
Oh, by a long shot.
But yeah, he could have been a top 10 pick also. So I'm gonna go with Rome Odunze here, going to the Giants, get Brian Dable, an absolute just monster of receiver that he can utilize. Once again, kind of to going to my point, when I look at these teams here, like I don't see why Tennessee would trade up unless they fell in love with Joe Alt, if they fell in love with Malik Nabers. Or maybe wanted to jump the Giants to get a guy. But even then, here in this situation, Olu Fashanu fell to them, and like he once again, he would have been probably the best tackle in last year's class also. So I think that they would be fine staying there. Let's say hypothetically both Olu and Joe Alt are off the board, then I think they'll gladly take Rome Odunze or potentially even Brock Bowers, who's still on the board, which was a potential thought here. So I'm going to go with Olu to the Titans here. Now with my Falcons here, what's funny about this. And I didn't realize Jaden Daniels was still on the board because I was thinking about all these other different things to do, trying to think outside the box here. So I just want to talk about what I was thinking about real quick. But they, long story short, they end up going with the quarterback here because I finally realized that he was still available. But I was thinking of different ways, different players, just hypothetically if Jaden Daniels didn't come here, and also if they didn't want to go with Rome Odunze or a receiver. I think Cooper DeJean would be a really interesting pick here. I think Jersey Newton with Grady Jarrett coming off his ACL tear, maybe trying to build up that defensive tackle spot. Then they're going to have all the edge rushers as well. So this could potentially be the first defensive pick coming off the board in my eyes. But it's with Jaden Daniels there. I mean, I think that's a no-brainer. And then with we're recording this now. It is Wednesday, so it is reported now that Raheem Morris is going to be the new head coach. He's going to want to have to come in and not have to worry about the quarterback position for hopefully a long time. So I think Jaden Daniels is going to be the guy. So moving on now to the Chicago Bears. This is another potential trade back spot here. And the reason why I didn't trade back, and I don't have any trades coming up until the mid-teens, but I think there's a combination of teams who there are going to be a lot of guys that I think that they're going to like right at their spot that's going to pick to them. Also, then with the combination, if you go look at picks 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, not all of them necessarily have the draft capital to move up, so to say. Like, for example, Denver, New Orleans, they only have a first and second round pick, and then they don't have any picks until the 5th round, I believe, or later into the 100. So not really too much maneuverability unless they want to take future draft capital away, which I think it's been their issue over these past couple of years, why they can't keep moving forward because they spent a lot of draft capital. So I think that they're going to stay put here. And I also think, too, the Bears, once again, are completely satisfied with a lot of different players that are here. Brock Bowers still on the board if they want to get a running mate with DJ Moore and Cole Kmet. I think that would be a phenomenal choice. Cooper DeJean also, I think, would be a good one. I think some of the other secondaries. And I also thought a lot about edge rusher with Dallas Turner, Jared Verse. We actually disagree on who's better, Dallas Turner or Jared Verse. I'm a little bit more on the Dallas Turner side. But I ended up actually going with corner here. I ended up going with Cooper DeJean. He's really been rising at my my draft boards. Dude is just super athletic, just in general, and I think he can be at worst like a Pro Bowl corner, and at best, I think he could be one of the best safeties in the league. So I think they have that flexibility. They can move him around a lot, even help out more in the run game, also in the passing game as well. For already a pretty young secondary, and they can keep bolstering up from there. Very curious to hear what Bears fans think about this draft so far. Going Caleb Williams, trading off Justin Fields, and going with Cooper DeJean as well. Because the way this draft board fell, there wasn't a receiver there. So I'm curious to see what your guys' thoughts were, or if you guys would have preferred an edge rusher. So this one here now with the New York Jets, I thought a lot about going offensive lineman here because we've talked a lot about Talise Fuaga, J.C. Latham, Marius Mims moving up. And I think I've done that in the past, even on my last mock draft that went on the 15th. I had Olu actually falling here, and that would be a no-brainer. But in this situation, Olu and Joe Alt don't go there. And I think a guy that's also working my way up, is working his way up my draft boards, I think a lot of draft boards, is Brian Thomas Jr. I think that's going to help out a lot for Garrett Wilson to see somehow had a 1,000-yard season last year. I don't know how. But I think having another legit weapon, which they don't really have outside of Breece Hall, to be honest, is going to help mitigate some of their offensive line concerns. And they can also go and get offensive linemen a little bit later in the draft. But I think if Aaron Rodgers comes back healthy and you have another elite weapon on the opposite of Garrett Wilson, it's going to force defenses to take a guy out of the box, which might take a little bit of pressure off the offensive line. So I'm going to go with Brian Thomas Jr. here, and they're going to go the more explosive weapon route. So now with Minnesota here, this is where a lot of the defensive players start falling off the board. I think this is I think this is a defense pick here almost for sure. I've gone Jersey Newton the past couple of times here, so I try to mix it up. I'm going to go DB. I'm going to go Nate Wiggins. I could easily see it being Kool-Aid McKinstry. I could maybe see it being Terry Arnold, Cooper DeJean, if he's still there. But it also could be Jersey Newton, Jared Verse, any of those guys. Potentially could be Jared Verse or Dallas Turner because Danielle Hunter is a free agent, so we'll have to see if he comes back. So moving on now to Denver. This is where I just mentioned his name. He's my number one edge rusher, but I'm going to go with Dallas Turner here going to the Denver Broncos. I could easily see this being Jared Verse. I almost more pick this off of the positional need. And because there's just a lot of need just in general for the Cowboys. So try to mix it up a little bit. I think a lot of
the Broncos.
What did I say?
The Cowboys.
Oh, my bad. Well, Cowboys too. We'll get the Cowboys in about 12 picks. So moving on now here to the Raiders. Very similar, I think, to the Broncos. A lot of things defense, honestly, outside of just edge rusher. Edge rushers, the only pick here I think would be a horrible pick. They don't need edge rushers at all. But I think what they do need is going to be some secondary help as well. There was so much turnover from 2022 to 2023. So there is a lot of it's a combination of veterans plus young players in that secondary for the Raiders. So I ended up going with Kool-Aid McKinstry here. Looking back on it, I could see Kool-Aid. I also Jersey Newton sitting right there too, and man, I think that would just be a beast. So that I think might have been a better pick there. So I'd be curious to see what Raiders fans think, or just in general. Just leave a comment if you think Jersey Newton would be better. Imagine Jersey Newton next to Max Crosby. Like I'd be terrified if I was an offensive line coach. I was like, how do we stop these guys? So this is where my first trade comes off the board here, and it's very possible that the Saints could take this guy as well. But I was sitting here thinking, and the Saints don't have any third-round picks. And honestly, if I'm not mistaken, let me go and just double-check what their draft capital is as of right now. So they have the 14th pick, the 45th pick, and then they don't even have a fourth-round pick. Their next pick is 148. They have over 100 picks between their 45th pick and the 148th pick. So I think they are going to trade back here, even though I say that it's very possible that they could take this guy. But if you're sitting at Cincinnati here, T. Higgins is in the free agent market. You do have money to potentially re-sign him. But one thing that has always been a concern, or just an area maybe of improvement, was their tight end capabilities. And this is where Brock Bowers actually fell a little bit. This is part of like the little experiment that I was trying of maybe trying to mix things up here. I do think it's possible Brock Bowers falls this far, just depending on how people value their tight ends. Because also I could see potentially. I could see a team like the Jets maybe taking him at 10 instead over Brian Thomas Jr. That might have been a better pick. But also, too, there are so many other team needs for that team. Same thing with the Vikings, the Broncos, the Raiders don't drafted Michael Mayer last year. I don't know if they technically really need him. So I think him falling to 14 here. A team like Cincinnati, they have a decent bit of draft capital. So I had, let me go with double check here. Had them trade the 18th pick and the 115th pick. According to Draft Tech, it's the draft chart, just of points and everything. This was about comparable. So we'll have to kind of see what happens on
the Patriots made this trade last year. It was 14-17 with the Steelers, but they got pick 121 back.
That's kind of where I got that. Actually, that's where I got that inspiration, just to kind of get an idea, and then I looked at the points as well, just to make sure that still made sense, because it was. But let me see this here. So yeah, Bengals drafting up here. I mean, then imagine, let's say they do get T. Higgins, and then they have Jamar Chase on the other side. And they do still have like Andre Yoshua, and then they have do they have Tyler Scott? Is that who they?
No, they have Charlie Jones,
That's it.
The Raiders have Tyler Scott.
That's it. But so then imagine then but then imagine then you throw Brock Bowers into that. Also, too, he's a 3-down tight end as well, which is, I kind of like that's the funny phrase now coming out, just because the tight ends have gotten so receiver athletic. But he can block, he can help out with some of the blocking schemes as well. I think that would just be almost unfair to have him in that offense and then have him playing with Joe Burrow. So then at 15, I think the Colts is another potential team to trade up to go and get Brock Bowers also. They ended up being bested by the Bengals here. So I do have them going with Jersey Newton here. They struggled in the run defense. They were a little bit smaller on the interior. They also have Taven Bryan, and then another gentleman is also hitting the free agency. That's a defensive tackle. So I think that they're going to bolster up here, immediately find their day one defensive tackle starter here, and they're going to go with a Jersey Newton. So last one, and I'll take a quick break. I'll be curious to hear on your thoughts here. But with the Seattle Seahawks, I think a lot of different ways they can go here. Very curious to see what the philosophy of the new head coach when he comes in and what he feels like they should be approached for in the draft. But I agree completely that interior offensive lineman is going to be a big need for the Seattle Seahawks. Maybe Troy Fatano. Curious to see how he does in the combine. And I think he's going to the senior. He's a senior, right? He's going to the Senior Bowl. Yeah,
I believe so.
I'll have to go delve it. Anyways, I'm curious to see how his offseason videos, because a lot of teams are going to try him in at guard or at center potentially as well. I see there's some potential to develop. In the meantime, I still think that they're going to go edge rusher, and I've gone Leatu Latu the past couple of times. This time, I'm going to go with Jared Verse this time. I'm going back and forth. Leatu Latu for me, I think, is more pro ready as of right now, but I don't think his ceiling is as high, if that makes sense. It's also to them with he's a little bit older, and then with his age history. So I think Jared Verse also kind of fits maybe the defensive scheming that they're wanting to do a little bit more in Seattle. So I'm going to take a quick break here. What do you think overall so far of this draft? It's probably a little bit different.
Yeah, it's definitely different. I don't really disagree with anything. I mean, I do think Caleb Williams going number 1 overall is a guarantee. Whether that's to the Chicago Bears or not is going to be very different. And then I do think Drake May, especially with Adam Peters going there to Washington as the general manager, they're probably going to hire a Shanahan, McVay kind of offense. And I think Drake May, if you're going to run that offense, it's going to be very over the middle heavy. He is the best over the middle thrower in this class. He's the only guy that really looks off safeties and linebackers consistently and gets a good read on those players. And so I think for Washington, they're going to get a great young prospect there. The Patriots, I understand the Marvin Harrison Jr. pick. I don't necessarily agree with it, because I feel like if you're New England, and I made this analogy on this channel, I think 100 times, but if you're going to go out and draft a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr., like, you're going to go buy this Lamborghini and then have nobody to give the keys to drive it, right? To get it to its full potential. And then I guess they could go like the Marvin Harrison Jr. Bo Nix route, but even then, I think Bo Nix, he would really have to wow at the Senior Bowl, and if he does wow at the Senior Bowl, he's probably not in range to be traded up for, right? So like, I just don't think that that's a viable option. And if you're going to go a non-quarterback, I think Joe Alt is probably the way to go, just because that would solidify your offensive line. If you do end up going after a Bo Nix, that would help him out greatly. And then I also think, too, if you look at the drop-off from the tackles from the top 5 to the top 5 in the second round, there's a really big drop-off there. Whereas I think if you go get, like in this class especially, I mean, you're getting impact players in the top 5 of the third round at the receiver position. So I don't know if that's quite as high of a priority there. I like Joe Alt to the Cardinals. I mean, to me, he's offensive lineman 1 in this class, and he would be a great fit in that offense for Kyler Murray. I like Malik Nabers. Roma Dunze makes sense. Maybe Olu Fashanu makes more sense there. My only thing is they already have 2 tackles that they've invested highly in there, in Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal. And I feel like adding in a third one is, one, stepping on toes that are already there and maybe disrupting that locker room slightly. But 2, like, you're going to have to sit one of the other guys that you spent a first-round pick on in the last 4 years. And so, like, that's kind of been the thing there. Granted, both those guys were really injured last year. I like everything else. I think if Jaden Daniels makes it to the Falcons, that's an absolute steal. I think Cooper DeJean being the first defensive player makes sense. I think this might be a little high for Brian Thomas Jr. I think maybe having him go 5 or 6 picks later is probably like where he'll end up. But again, I really like Brian Thomas Jr. I think if you miss out on Marvin Harrison Jr., there you go. Like, you have Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah.
So it's like still, I think a really good pick. I think Talise Fuaga would be another one there, especially with the running game that they have. I like Nate Wiggins, Dallas Turner, Brock Bowers to 14, Christian Gonzalez last year at 17 to New England was a great steal, and I think this is even better than that one. So I think that's a fantastic pick there. And then Jersey Newton, Jared Verse. I mean, those are just really solid players that I think are going to have long NFL careers that I think both those teams would be really happy with. So again, not really anything that I really dislike at this point. So
yeah, that's like doing a lot of mock drafts now, and then this will be the third one put out on the internet for the whole world to see for this year. And it's like, I mean, I'm sure there are picks like maybe I would go back and not do, like maybe Kool-Aid McKinstry, for example. Like, I take Jersey Newton. But that being said, though, not that I just like Kool-Aid McKinstry. Like, it's like I grade Kool-Aid McKinstry as like an 8.8. I think a Jersey Newton is an 8.9.
Yeah.
So it's super good overall.
This class is so interesting to me because usually there's 20 to 25 guys that truly grade out as first rounders. Like, I know obviously there's 32 first round picks, but not all 32 guys are graded out as a first rounder.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's tiers within those players. To me, you have the top 10, which is the true blue chippers of this class. And then you have another 25 or 30 guys that probably do rank out as first round draft picks. They're just either going to be in a really deep wide receiver class. People are going to be taking, I think, a lot of tackles in the back end of the first round as well. And then also too, I think defensive players are getting pushed down because there's so many wide receivers. There's so many tackles at the top end. And this tackle class is really top heavy, but it's a really interesting class. And I've never seen a class where you have 20 to 25 players that are so similarly graded at a bunch of different positions that you really could just kind of pick your poison, or not pick your poison. That's but pick your flavor that you want and go forward with it. And it would really make sense.
Yeah. No, it's a lot of different ways everybody could go here. And so I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I agree with you completely. There's going to be great value that's going to be going on in the early part of the second round, just because you're right. There's a lot of guys that are probably first round grades that are just going to fall. So let's get back to it here. Let's finish out these last 16 picks. So Jacksonville Jaguars on the clock. I've gone offensive line with them. I've gone edge with them. I think this time I'm going to go corner with them. I have to go with Terry and Arnold here. The fourth corner off the board. The fourth corner off the board. And so I've been going back and forth on really what the issue has been with the Jacksonville Jaguars defense. I think they solved one of the problems. It was a defensive coordinator, and so they fired him. It's also too based off those reports. Looks like you guys are about to get Ryan Nielsen from the Atlanta Falcons, who is our defensive coordinator. That should be a lot of fun. I thought he did a very good job over here. So congratulations. I think Jacksonville could go in so many different directions. I also think they could go receiver here. I don't think I've done that yet. Maybe I'll do that next time. So moving on to the Saints now after their trade with Cincinnati. One of the reasons also, too, why I wanted to trade back with the Saints is, as I think I already mentioned, they don't have a third or fourth round pick. They have over 100 pick difference between their second pick, the 45th overall, to their third pick, which is 148th pick overall in the fifth round. So I think they want to get a little more draft capital, while also they were still going to be guaranteed one of these, I would say, second tier offensive linemen. And they're having 4 or 5 key offensive linemen that are hitting free agency. And with their cap space, they have the worst cap space out of everybody, negative 70-something million. I think that they're going to want to try and kind of reset that clock on the offensive line here, go and try and get a stud that you really like, Talise Furaga here, getting him at 18 overall. So moving on to the Rams here. Rams, especially after watching that Detroit Lions game, I know they came on strong in the second half, but just in general, I think anything and everything defense is something that the Rams are going to do here with this first pick. They could potentially go offensive lineman here as well, like with J.C. Latham or Amarius Mims, who's still going to be on the board. But I'm actually going to go with Laiatu Latu. I think, once again, he immediately comes in. I know he's a little bit older, does have the injury history, but he was probably one of the best edge rushers last year. But because of just his age, his injury history, he's going to fall a little bit. So the Rams are getting a guy that I think is pro-ready day one. He's going to be one of the starting edge rushers for the Rams here to go alongside Aaron Donald if he comes back. So this is my second and final trade coming up here. So I mentioned the Arizona Cardinals a little bit earlier. They have a lot of draft capital coming up here. And so don't think I ended up putting the trade value here for them. I don't think it would be too much to move up from 27 to 20, but they have some extra draft capital as well here. I don't even think it'd be 104. I think it'd be something more like 140, 133. That's fine. Just to move up a couple of spots here. You go and get Troy Franklin. I really like Troy Franklin. Think he is a very dynamic receiver here. He's going to go well with Kyler Murray. I think also as well with the offensive line now they have building. Kyler Murray more time. James Conner is one of the better running backs in the league, and I expect to have a good season so far. Pairing him up then with Marquise Brown, they end up re-signing him, which I believe they should. And then I think he starts to really help build that receiver room. So it's not Marvin Harrison Jr., which they didn't get, who actually wasn't even available. But it's not Malik Nabers, but I still think that he provides a good dynamicness. I also think, too, I think he's a little bit different than what they have here with Marcus Brown and Rondell Moore. So he is shifty and dynamic, but still, I feel like he's like I feel like he could be their X receiver. While Marquise Brown, they can around a bunch. So
to me, he's 180 or 190 pound version of Brian Thomas Jr. He's 6'3", 190. They run a lot of the same routes, and they are both that kind of more outside wide receiver. Another thing I will say, I do like Troy Franklin maybe as a Z receiver instead of that traditional X. But I think if you look later in this draft, I mean, they have a couple second round picks. They could still get a Keon Coleman, A.D. Mitchell, one of those guys later as well, just to kind of continue to bolster that room. Because again, they have the draft capital to splurge on that. So
So moving on now to Miami, they need offensive line help here, and I think they also could go receiver here as well. I think the only receivers that they have on contract going to next year is Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. Maybe some other random like practice squad guy that I'm missing. But Chosen Anderson, I think, was supposedly. Well, I guess Chosen Anderson was that guy, the practice squad guy. But I'm going to go offensive line here because they just need some help, and I think you had a guy like J.C. Latham, super athletic. I think potentially this could be a sneaky Troy Franklin spot if he is available. So Philadelphia Eagles here on the clock. Olamide Zaccheaus and Quez Watkins are both free agents here, so I think that they're actually going to hit the receiver market as well. I think that Ladd McConkey is going to be the one that comes off here. I think he's good, would be a great slot receiver. I think then they could still utilize him and move him around as well with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown and just help take a little bit of pressure off the running game. We'll have to see what happens with the Eagles here overall in the offseason. If their offensive line and a lot of their veterans start to retire, maybe they want to try and get a little bit more depth on the secondary side. But I feel like I kind of went with Ladd here as over secondary because I feel like they can go and get secondary later on. I feel like there's going to be a lot of corners, kind of as what you talked about earlier about the drop off. I don't think now there's too big of a drop off between now and then guys that they could go get. That would be in the 50s or 80s or something like that. So, because it's still, I think, going to be kind of a crapshoot.
Yeah.
So, picking here now, the Houston Texans. I think they need to maybe help out a little bit on the offensive line, a little bit on the defensive side of the ball as well. But similar to the Eagles, I just don't really like some of the guys as well. They're good on the tackle position. So that's why they wouldn't go with Demarius Mims here. I think, once again, a guy like Chris Braswell or Braylon Trice, I don't think there's as big a difference over a guy like Jonah Ellis, which maybe they can go and get in the second round, or guys like that. I think this is kind of an example now where the offensive players is very top-heavy here. So I'm actually throwing out a guy that you like. You saw him play live, Tez Walker. I think that he could be a good addition here.
Watched him break his rib.
You did watch him, yeah. That was oh my god, that was a gnarly hit.
That was a nasty hit from his blind side. Actually, I think he just had bruised ribs after. Either way, it hurt. Like it looked like it really.
It hurt me. It hurt me watching that. So, but I think I can just imagine though. Nico Collins is your ex, Tank Dell in the slot, Tez Walker on the other side. Then let's say they re-sign Dalton Schultz, or if they want to get crazy, let's say Jatavian Sanders is there at pick 59 for them. I think that would be crazy. And then it's Bobby Sloak hasn't been selected as a head coach yet. He's probably going to be going and getting a head coaching job. But that being said, though, I think 5 of the 8 spots are taken now. So we'll have to kind of see who might be available. Potentially he comes back as an offensive coordinator. Then that would just be crazy. Then they run the table.
Oh,
again. So here with the Dallas Cowboys as well, once again, even with this team, not too many major needs. Tyron Smith is going to be a free agent, so maybe they want to address the tackle position, or maybe they bring him back. But once again, secondary as well are some potential needs. I think defensive interior, there's really only one guy as right now, Leonard Taylor. But I think that there's some guys that might work their way up, maybe Devondre Sweat from Texas. But I think he could work his way up, potentially be available for the second pick. But I will say, I did mention the school that this guy went to. I think something that the offense needs is another consistent number 2 guy. Jake Ferguson developed into that premier classic tight end, but Michael Gallup and Brandon Cooks just, I felt, weren't providing enough support. That being said, CD Lamb was taking all the shares essentially, but I do think a guy like Xavier Worthy is someone that can come in, play that slot. They can utilize him around. They still have Cooks, still have what's his name? I just said it. Michael Gallup as well that can roll in and out, but he's a young, shifty receiver. I think has a lot of potential. I also think Jerry Jones might want to make that Texas connection also. So moving on now to the Dallas Cowboys here. I also have them going receiver. No, I'm just joking. That would be insane if they went receiver after all the talent that they got in the later rounds in last year's draft. So they do not need receiver, but I do think they need some offensive line help here. David Bakhtiari is probably not coming back. He has another season that ended in injury, and he only had a couple of games that he played. I think a guy like Amarius Mims, who's just super athletic, I think a guy that they can develop because their offensive line did improve over the season. So even if he comes in at the backup here, but I think it's still a developmental project and a guy that's just so freakishly athletic. And so that's actually another guy that you saw live too. You talked about like how you saw him on the other side of the field.
So where our seats were, we were like on the visitor sidelines, but we watched Georgia Tech warm up against Georgia. And like you could see Amarius Mims in line on the other side of the field from our seats. Like we were on the opposite 20. You'd be like, oh yeah, that's Amarius Mims all the way over there. He is a massive human.
Right. So I think then with how well they want to run the ball, and then also if they're able to run the ball well, it keeps that offense super dynamic. A guy of his size that can come in to develop a great run blocker, but also just a great pass blocker as well, I think could really help out. Mm-hmm. So Packers, not the Packers, the Buccaneers picking after the Packers. I agree with those needs completely. I know that they made it to the divisional round of the NFC, but I think they can improve in nearly every single position, potentially even a sneaky wide receiver spot if there's a guy that they like, they want to add into the slot. Well, I take that back. Trey Palmer, I think, is a guy they could definitely develop. So maybe not receiver as much, but anything else, honestly, then outside the quarterback and then the tackle position. So I ended up going here with Chris Braswell, edge rusher, get somebody super athletic on the outside of Vita Vea. And so provide a little bit more dynamic pass rush there, maybe help out a little bit in the passing game as well, help out the secondary. So Pittsburgh now on the clock here after trading with Arizona. So I had them going with Enos Rakestraw, cornerback out of Missouri. I think a neat little stat about him. Now, he only played in 9 games last year, but he only allowed 197 yards in those 9 games. So I find that pretty impressive coming from an SEC corner. So I think this is going to help him rise up the draft board just a little bit. Have to see how he does in the combines and some of the testing as well. Looking forward to like watching him more go up against like some live one-on-one competition. So Buffalo Bills here, fortunately, fell just short. So I do agree that I think that some of their secondary is not going to be able to come back. They have a lot of cap space issues, a lot of defensive holes that they need to fill. I think they're pretty good on the defensive front. They can maybe go and get a linebacker here, but I mean, maybe if they wanted to stretch on like a Jeremiah Trotter or who's the other guy from Texas A&M, Edrin Cooper. I think
Edrin Cooper.
We'll have to see how they test out if they want to maybe go linebacker here, do something similar to what the Lions did. Probably not. Lions is in the 2023 draft where they took Jack Campbell, but probably not here. I actually have them going with Cameron Kitchens, the best safety off the board here. A lot of safeties are hitting the free agency for them, a lot of just secondary in general. So I think he's probably the best of the remaining safety here.
Yeah, so Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. Sorry to interrupt, but Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde are both mid-30s, likely to retire, and Jordan Poyer's in a contract year. This year. So.
Yeah, I think Micah Hyde is hitting free agency also. So I think it's both, and then Taylor Rapp also is a free agent.
Yeah, so he's 26.
Yeah, that's true. Kansas City Chiefs here. I'm trying to be as open-minded as I can on every single team, and including the Kansas City Chiefs here. With the receiver talent overall in this class, I do not see how they don't take a receiver here. I'm very curious on what they would do. But that also being said, though, maybe there's a guy that they really like, knowing that there'll be a receiver in the second round. So with that being said, I tried to mix it up here. I think Rashee Rice has been a phenomenal pick. I think he's going to have a great sophomore season. But I think they want a big physical receiver on the outside as well, but also then a guy that they can still utilize around who's also just looks like a freak athlete, DK Metcalf-esque. I'm going to go with Xavier Leggett here. I think that would be a lot of fun to see how Patrick Mahomes does with him. And I also kind of went with this pick as well. Now I'm not making any comparisons to Spencer Rattler is like Patrick Mahomes, but I think Xavier Leggett, I could say there's a style of play that might be there that's similar.
I get your analogy. Like Spencer Rattler plays, he ad-libs
and improvises.
Yeah.
He is as good as Patrick Mahomes.
No, not even close.
I am joking. Well, if you're typing on your keyboard right now, just know that was a joke. So, but I went with that pick though, because I do think, I think as we saw, like for example, like when Jordan Addison with his year at Pittsburgh versus then his year with Caleb Williams, he did drop off a little bit in his production because Caleb Williams liked to improvise. So I do think that there's also comes with that as a receiver, that natural innate ability to improvise as well, or like to know what your quarterback's thinking or going through and then to try and find open space. Jordan Addison didn't have as much success. Even though I think that being said, didn't he win the Blitnikoff Award? Or was that in?
That was at Pitt.
Oh, okay, that was at Pitt. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Either way, though, so I think Xavier Leggett coming kind of from a program like that with Spencer Rattler, I think that could help him move up the draft board. In general, though, I'm just maybe trying to over-justify my pick here. I think they're going receiver. I just don't know who else they can go pick. So, but here now with the Detroit Lions, I ended up going with a defensive tackle here, Byron Murphy. I think he's a big run-stuffing guy, and I think if there's an area that they need some help in, it's going to be just that middle area, help out with Aiden Hutchinson also, and providing some good pressure, maybe creating some more one-on-one situations. Because I think Aiden Hutchinson can start to develop and is starting to develop into that potential Max Crosby, TJ Watt-esque type guy, like top edge rusher in the league. So last two picks here, I'll go through these pretty quick. San Francisco 49ers, Jordan Morgan here, offensive tackle, develop on the offensive line. Trent Williams is getting a lot older. And then Baltimore Ravens here, I have them going with Keon Coleman, going with receiver here. both these teams, not really too many flaws. I feel like I'm being very nitpicky for both of these. With Keon Coleman here, I think he's just something different than what they have currently. I think he's a good deep threat guy. So, but that's my draft. What are your thoughts?
I like it. So I kind of already did the first 16. I'll start here at 17. I like Terrion Arnold there. Taliese Fuaga is a really solid pick. He is, to me, I had Darnell Wright as a top 10 pick. He, to me, is a better prospect than Darnell Wright, just tape wise, and so if they get him here at 18, I think that's fantastic. I will say last year the class was pretty lacking for like the true top end, like blue chip talent. So that is probably, I think, part of the reason why he falls here. Well, I think that's a great fit for Latu Latu. Troy Franklin, I think he's a high end speed receiver. I would like to see him line up a little bit more in the Z spot rather than playing like a true X. But again, I still think he's a very versatile guy, can play inside and outside, and has the ability to beat press man coverage. J.C. Latham, Lad McConkey. I like Tez Walker, I think is a great fit there. He'll get a lot of favorable matchups. And then, Ennis Rakestraw to the Steelers, they need secondary help. Cameron Kitchens to the Bills makes a lot of sense. Xavier Legette, a lot of people really have him high. He's just an absolute freak. And I think you just watch him, and he's just looks like a man amongst boys playing. And he was playing in the SEC, and so I think that's a really great fit for him. But then also Byron Murphy, Jordan Morgan, Keon Coleman. I like all of those as well. I don't quite have Keon Coleman this high, just because of his lack of ability to separate. But I think in that system, he'll get a lot of favorable matchups. I think Lamar has shown this year that he doesn't have a problem throwing balls up for grabs. And Keon Coleman definitely is a guy that can go up and get football. So,
and that's my thought process too with that pick, because I agree with you. I think that type of receiver, I think another potential option as well is he could go to Buffalo, and he replaces Gabe Davis, because I feel like that's kind of both their role, that go ball kind of guy. But in a system like Baltimore, you really have to respect the run, so you have to kind of play up a little bit.
Yeah.
So, and then also too, with how shifty Zay Flowers is as well, then you still have Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely also. He could just be a guy, be like, hey, you're just going to go run 50-yard sprints all day and make the defenses have to watch you, so then he can create space underneath. So
exactly.
We'll have to go and see. But he probably isn't, of all the picks, I think in the first round, he's probably the one that I would say would fall out of the first round.
He's also pick 32.
I know.
Like, you're right, he's on the fringe.
You didn't let me finish my sentence, but I know. Oh. So Spencer Rattler's as good as – no, I'm just kidding. But, yeah, it's going back to, I think, what we said earlier. What's just amazing about this draft, though, is like even starting at pick 9, the Bears could honestly go any direction. The top 8 picks, I can legitimately see those top 8 players are going to be taken there. After that, it's like, man, even Brock Bowers now, like, having him fall, I could have made arguments for myself to have him be taken earlier, but since he's a tight end, how do teams value that? Overall team need. There's a lot of really good players also overall, so it's gonna be a lot of fun. I mean, shoot, it's only been a month of us doing, and not even a month of us doing mock draft Monday. So it's gonna be great.
No, yeah, I'm looking forward to continuing doing these. I'm really looking forward to next week. The Senior Bowl is going on, so that is always a big draft draw there, and then the Combine's there at the end of February, beginning of March, and then it's only a month and a half away from the draft. So April 25th is quickly approaching, and yeah, I'm sure these boards will change a ton between now and then, and we'll have a bunch of risers, a bunch of fallers, and yeah. So, any other comments? Any other things to add?
No. Leave a comment. I'd love to know your guys' thoughts. Make fun of me.
Yeah. Oh, we'll do that plenty. So let's go ahead and wrap up.
There's plenty of material there.
Oh, I am sure. So let's go ahead and wrap up this video here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below and make fun of Tyler. Let him know what you thought of his mock draft. Let him know if it was good, if it was bad. And other than that, we will see you guys next time.